Alright everybody, well I bought a new camera and I wanted to take a minute to make a little video and show something about it. So what we have here is the Mamiya RZ67 Pro Mark II, which as I've read is very similar to the Mark I with just some subtle differences. And they also made a Pro 2D which had extra electronics for supporting a digital camera back. So let's talk about what we have here. First off, it's a very modular body. We can remove the waist level viewfinder and remove the 120 film back. And what you're left with is a core module with the lens opening, the mirror. It's basically just the mirror box, shutter control, focus knobs, advancement lever. Yeah. So what I will show you is, we'll start at the top here. So this is the focusing screen, which can be lifted this way. See, there's two little pivot points here and here, and it latches under there and then right through here. So they sell different interchangeable focusing screens. Around back we have the back of the mirror, and in the front we have the spot the lens goes. So to place the lens on this camera, you have to have advanced the winder so that the mirror is down all the way. And so for we'll go ahead and attach the 140mm macro. Now these use a twist ring. It's a little different if you're used to the regular bayonet mount. The lens goes straight on like this, and then the ring is rotated to lock it in place. Next we'll put the waist level viewfinder back on, and that's done by tipping in from the back, pinching the two locks, pressing down and then releasing. Finally we will take the 120 film back like this, and you can see there's a mark here and a mark here, and so these line up like this, and then the switch on the bottom is rotated to lock it in place. The waist level viewfinder pops up like this. Here, we'll go ahead and take this off. I don't know if we'd be able to see through here, and then there is a small switch here that can pop up the magnifier. You squeeze here and the whole thing collapses. This is a focus lock knob. When it's in this position, focus is released. You can crank the knob on either side of the camera to focus. And this side has a double knob, with this being a coarse grain adjustment and the inner knob being a fine grain adjustment. I'll go ahead and turn the camera around here. It's probably easier to see. We have a guide on the side to show focus distance. So, or distance to subject, I should say. So with the 140mm lens on, we would follow this zone over here, and we would see that, this little line here, and we would see that if this were in focus, that it looks like that lines up roughly with the number 2 on the meter side. The subject would be about 2 meters away. Let's cut back on here. The shutter speed knob is here. If you have the auto exposure viewfinder, you leave it in this position, and the camera will meter and select the shutter speed for you. Otherwise, you can choose from 1/400th of a second down to 1 second, half second, quarter, 1/8 bulb. And there's an additional setting on here, RBL, which is for the use of RB body lenses. So the main difference between the newer RZ cameras and the RB is that the RZ lenses use Seiko electric shutters for the leaf shutter in the lens. And so if you need to use an RBL lens, you push this here, and then you would adjust the shutter speed on the lens itself. If you want to take a actual photograph, this is the shutter release, and it has a red safe position, which prevents you from taking a photograph. White is for normal operation of the camera, and if you need to do an emergency release, you can press this down and rotate here. So if you do this mode, it will work without the battery in the camera, but your shutter speed is always going to be fixed at 1/400th of a second. This is also useful for simply releasing the shutter. Aperture is adjusted on the lens with the aperture ring. Both the lenses that I have are the newer LA models, which have the floating element system in them. Sorry, that's not visible. LA lenses with the floating element system in them. And the idea is that after you focused on the subject using the bellows, you will come back in and adjust this ring on the floating element to ensure that you have an even field of focus. Some lenses have a curved field of focus depending on how far away the subject is. Now, as this is a macro lens, the scale also says number 1, number 2, and number 1+2. That's referring to the Mamiya extension tubes. So you can put an extension tube between the body and the lens. So if you're using the number 1 extension tube, number 2, or you have both of them stacked, these are the range of adjustments you would make. If you're not using an extension tube, you simply use this range here. This rotates and does not actually change anything inside the lens. It is just for calculating depth of field. So there's aperture numbers and a scale, and don't entirely know how that works. There's a switch on this side of the camera, which when straight up is for normal operation. Putting it to R allows you to rotate the back. So this is how you switch from horizontal and vertical shots. You don't rotate the camera, you just rotate the back. And then finally there is an M position for doing multiple exposures. So if you crank the lever, it will recock the shutter, set the mirror, but it will not advance the back. Now, if you, I've only put one roll of film through this, but I've already messed this up a couple times on accident. If you have been in R setting to rotate the back, remember to only go halfway in order to take the next picture, and not all the way back, which I have accidentally done 2 times. And then you'll end up with a double exposure that you didn't want. So, to actually take a picture, you have to have film in the camera, and you have to remove this metal plate. In fact, why don't we go ahead and demonstrate loading a roll of film into the back. Alright, I'm going to demonstrate loading film in the back, and the way that we do this is first by flipping the switch and removing the back from the camera. We'll set this aside. This is the 120 back, so it's for 120 film. They also made a Mark II version of this back, and I have no idea what the difference is. To begin with, to open the back, you pull up on this little tab, down on this little tab, and then the clamshell part of the back will open, and you can remove the film cassette. Now the empty is on the left side here. That's because I've finished a roll and have not moved it over. So to press the button here to release, you press this button here to move it in, to move the other side in. You line the slot up with the little crank lever here. Yeah. There we go. We're going to load up a roll of Fuji Provia 100 slide film. Alright, so we will peel the tape off. Now you can see here there's a little arrow showing you the direction the film should wind. So again, we're going to press this button to depress the button there. Okay, so the film's going to go around this way, and we're just going to pull this. Uh-oh, what's going on here? Okay, it had not popped all the way back up. You can see the film was dragging across there. So having pulled the film across this way, you take this little tab out and insert it into the slot in the empty spool. This is a bit awkward to do while trying to face the video camera. So I tell you what, I'm going to come around this way and just go ahead and do it. But it goes into the slot into the slot here, and then we'll crank the handle. Okay, so it's biting, it's winding, and what you want to do is you want to keep winding until this arrow lines up with the start mark, like that. Okay, so at that point it's still just the black leader. The roll is spooled and ready to go. We will put it back into the back here, close the door, and squeeze these two shut. Okay, at this point the back will go back onto the camera. We will lock it down, and we will advance and keep advancing until we get to frame 1. Now, you may have noticed there's a little red indicator there. The red indicator went away, and we know that there is a fresh image ready to be exposed there. Okay? So at this point we'll move on to taking an actual picture. Now, in fact, I think I will take the finder off here to hopefully get a little better view of this. And what I want to show you is that with the body cocked and the film back on, if I try to press the exposure button right now, it went ahead and did it for some reason. Because I still have it set on emergency. Alright, well, we will go ahead and put that back to white for normal operation. Now to avoid, since I didn't actually expose this image, the red marker shows it's exposed. This is actually a good lesson. So since the this image was not actually exposed, right, the safety plate is still in, I'm going to set this to M for multiple exposure. That way I can recock the shutter without advancing the back. Okay? Alright, so now everything is set for normal operation. I will try and demonstrate what I was doing a second ago. I will push this button and you will see that there's a red light that comes on. Okay? That red light is to warn me that I still have the safety plate in. So the camera will not let you take a picture with the safety plate still in place. Alright? So I'm going to demonstrate actually taking a picture, but because I don't want to expose this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set it to a very fast shutter speed, a very narrow aperture, and leave the lens cap on. That way when I take the picture it's not really going to expose the image here. And just so I don't ruin one, I'm going to put this back on M for multiple exposure. So with all these things done, we can now take the picture, advance the winder again, take another picture. There is a timed exposure setting. So the idea here is you would advance the shutter, you would press this button in and move the lever on the lens to T. And what's going to happen is when you press the shutter release, the aperture is going to open, the mirror is going to slap up, and it's going to remain open. It doesn't matter what this setting is set to, the lens is going to keep it open until you push the little silver button. So there, you see that? I go ahead and put the safety plate back in, which again, it goes in between these two white marks, and then we can advance this to take a picture. Now at this point, if I put it back in normal operation, I wonder if it's going to let me take a picture. It will not, because this one shows it's already exposed. So the camera has a number of safety features built in to keep you from accidentally double exposing. So basically the only way you can accidentally do it is to pull this too far back when you didn't mean to. And of course at that point you can take a picture, provided you have the plate out. So they've tried to make it foolproof. Let's move on and just quickly talk about the Polaroid back, which I have here. So, something I forgot to mention is when you load the film, you want to, this is a little adjustment for setting the correct ISO for the film that you've loaded. Okay? And that's going to affect the automatic exposure setting if you're using the Prism Finder that does auto exposure. So the Polaroid back I already have loaded. We're on image 4 here, but this is using Fujifilm brand Instant Film. I have it set to 3200 ISO. This is the now discontinued black and white FP3000B film. And let's just go ahead and put that back on. So the alignment back goes on the same way the 120 back goes on. So as we line up the marks and then rotate the lever.